What'd you think? There was a lot in there.
It was an impressive interview, Brett. He's an impressive man, and he's someone we haven't been able to really get a handle on. We don't see him speaking and talking in the way he did with this interview very often, if at all. And so it was a revelation. You could make the argument, Brett, that this man in his country is making as big a difference as any leader in the world is making in his or hers. And so to hear him was impressive. Obviously, the eye-catching sound bites about, if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, Saudi would have to get one. It was interesting. And all that he said about the relationship, the possible normalization with relations with Israel was very interesting and quite hopeful, I thought. It does seem that the Biden administration has thought better of its attempts to make his regime a pariah, and that seems to be on track from what we heard from him, avoiding that.
Yeah, Dana, at 38 years old, listen, he's going to be around. He's going to be a player in the world for decades to come. If this normalization deal with Israel happens, he called it the biggest deal since the Cold War. It could be bigger in the big picture.
I think history would judge that very favorably, of course. And I was impressed with the interview. I am interested to learn more about him. I think that he does have a history that is somewhat unsettling and ruthless. You asked him about that, and it was right to do so. And yet, I also think it's very interesting, aside from the geopolitical questions, for example, your Ukraine, Russia, China question, those were very good. But it is interesting to see what a new generation of leadership can do. So you and I were there in 2008 together on that presidential trip.
Yeah.
And to know the difference of what's happened for young people and women, and the fact that there's more access to news, information. They're even going to start making video games there. And he has an interesting viewpoint and a vision. He's got all the money in the world to do it. I thought that was an interesting thing. But I also would say this relationship could be complex, complicated, and a little unsettling going forward. But it is a hopeful message, and one that I think that gives us reason to think that we could have a good relationship going forward.
It's really interesting also, Harold, to hear him, see him speak in English. It's the first interview he's ever done in English. And that, I think, goes to say he wanted to talk to our viewers. He wanted to talk to America and kind of introduce himself in a different way.
Without a question, I echo what everyone has said. The interview was substantive, Brett, and you deserve a lot of credit. I was most interested in hearing him talk about two things. One, he talked about the economic growth of the country. He talked about how exciting, as you think about the 21st century and the role that Saudi Arabia will play. He talked about the new trade relationships and the synergies and the ability to connect with other parts of the world. When you think about America and you think about American business and you think about American industry, he was speaking directly to us and letting us understand, hoping that we would understand that this is a new generation of leadership there. I was reminded of the great American Arthur James Baldwin, who once said that people are trapped in history and sometimes history is trapped in people. He betrayed that tonight, this evening in that interview, or this morning, like you interviewed him a little while ago, by suggesting not only to the American people but to the world that this is a new day. And if they're able to get this deal done with the Israelis, the impact that will have on the U.S. and the region, the positive impact, can't be understated. So he's got his hands full, he's got his plate full, but it was encouraging to watch him this evening.